talk about the album. We just can't reveal the title.
Oh, great. Because then that's how we'll talk about it. Awesome.
Yeah. Actually, just like I told you, I just delivered it to the label.
Okay. Awesome.
Last week. So.
Awesome. Well, we are going live. We are.
Right.
It's Wednesday, July 21st. Hello, make weird music people. Thanks for tuning in. I'm here with someone that I can't always call my guests a dear friend, but I love when I can, because then it's just someone I'm having a conversation with. But this is a man who's a composer, keyboard player, pianist, synthesist, a producer. Dozens of albums to his credit that he's played on, that he's produced. You may know his group, the Rocket Scientists. You may know his albums with Lana Lane, his dear wife, who we're going to be talking about their new record. Dukes of Orient, Asia with John Payne, just so many great tours, so many great bands. The Last in Line band, that was some pretty awesome videos. I never saw that band, but a man who's all over the map. Orchestral music, metal, progressive music, ambient music. He's here tonight. Erik Norlander, how are you, man?
Good to see you, André. I'm great.
Good to see you, bro.
Yeah.
As I said, I did a special. I'm usually in production black, but I did a special nerdy Yamaha CS80. And as you pointed out, that's a typo.
There's a typo. I know. There's a typo.
No dash in there.
It's because we're friends. I probably wouldn't have pointed that out otherwise, but there's no dashes in Yamaha product names. So DX7, GS1, CS80, no dashes.
Possibly all synthesizers that are in the building with you right now. Well, let's start out with just kind of getting. Give me an idea of what this 16 months has been like, because I know. I've known you for many years, and you're often in your studio. You're creating and writing and producing. And give me a snapshot of the past 16 months, how it's been under this sci-fi movie.
Well, I'm going to go back just a little farther than that to mid 2018, and I had been doing a lot of touring up to that point. As you mentioned, I played with Asia featuring John Payne. From 2007 to 2014 or something like that. And then I ended up playing with this metal band called Last in Line, which was basically the original Dio band with a new singer. And I thought, my friend Vinny Appice, the drummer, called me up and introduced me to Vivian Campbell, the guitar player. And they asked me to play some shows with them. And I figured it was going to be 2 or 3 shows. And all right, it's Dio music for a keyboard player. I could learn a 90-minute set in about 92 minutes. So it was, not terribly difficult musically. And so instead of doing 2 or 3 shows, I ended up doing like 200 and some shows. And, it was fun. We got to travel a lot and we're treated pretty well. And, the problem was that time was ticking away and I wasn't doing my own stuff enough. And it was a good gig, but it wasn't like a life-changing gig. And obviously musically, it was not the most fulfilling thing in the world. So I ended up making a decision in 2018. Okay, I'm going to stop this and I'm going to just get back in the studio and do a lot more, composing and producing and recording, and I'm going to do a lot of sound design work and sound library development, which is also a big part of what I do. And so that worked out rather well, because when the quarantine hit in early 2020, I was already in this mode where I was, for the first time in 15 years or more, I was really staying home a lot and, working in my studio here and, working on music and working on sound design. And so it was not much of an inconvenience for me.
Right.
Had it happened 5 years earlier, it would have been disastrous. And for a lot of my friends that make their living touring and all that, it was disastrous. It was hard. So yeah, right, Andre.
Yeah.
I mean, you especially, I mean, you do your own gigs and you go out with these, national acts as well, like Yes and Adrian Belew and all these great artists, UK. So that must have been awful for you.
It's been a challenge, but I'm a really yin yang kind of a guy, so I'm making lemonade with lemons kind of thing. But I say that now, we're 16 months in, but yeah, there was a dark couple of months. I curled up in a ball a couple of times, and it's funny. It was going to be one of my busiest years ever. So so we lemonade, right? So okay, well that's cool though that you, for the first time in 15 years, you had already segued into. I mean, that's fantastic. So talk to us about what happened, because I know sound design, making a new album. Give us a snapshot of what was easy to segue into.
I actually I had this idea in that I was going to take a year off from music.
Wow.
Because I've been doing it for, let's see, I'm going to be 54 years old next week. So I've been doing it since I was in my teens. So how many years is that? A lot of years. Nearly 40 years.
Right.
And probably the last 30 of those years have been, touring, traveling, doing crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And I thought, all right, at whatever, 51 years old, I'm going to just take a year off, and I'm going to do some sound design stuff, some just research projects, and just kind of get back into my synths a little bit, and, kind of reinvent, my own sounds a little bit. And I made that decision. And then within about 2 weeks, John Payne and Frontiers Records wanted another Dukes of the Orient album, a follow-up to the first album. So it's like, all right, well, that's off the table. So we wrote a second Dukes of the Orient album, which is called Freak Show.
Okay.
And we recorded that in 2019 and came out in early 2020. Actually, I'm sorry, it came out, when did it come out? Mid 2020, I think.
20, right. That was the one, yeah.
Because we actually had plans to tour, and then we actually even had plans to do like a really nice, like big production video, like, on a big stage with smoke and lights and like all the kind of cool videos. And because of coronavirus, we couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So we finished the album before coronavirus, which was great. But then, of course, then you go to do the videos and all that. And by the time we went to do the videos, sorry, you can't do it. So when you see the video from that album, you just see my keyboard rig set up back here in my studio. That it's that kind of video. So anyway, that's my favorite.
Yes,
I hate it.
We'll come back to that. Yeah.
Right, we'll come back to that. So that's kind of was the first part of coronavirus. And then I did work on quite a few sound library projects. I released just a ton of content with IK Multimedia. Sampletron 2 is a good one. And then this library collection called Cinekinetic, and then another one called Electromagnetic. And then kind of mixed in with all that, I ended up working on this thing.
Yeah.
This new synth. This upside down. Here we go.
It was Keith Emerson style there.
Right. Yeah, I can't.
Yeah.
Right. Can I play Toccata and Fugue? Yeah, this
go.
way. Right.
Oh man.
So
that's great. Busy.
And then more recently, my wife Lana was asked by Frontiers Records to do a new album for them, and this is actually her first proper studio album in 9 years. Wow. The last one came out in 2012. So we wrote that demoed it, did the pre-production, we recorded it, and I actually just delivered it to the label last week. So that is in the can, and we're excited for that to come out and for everyone to hear it.
That's fantastic. And as you say, there's going to, what's the date on that? When is it? I'm sorry. Or
I don't exactly know.
Okay.
We were talking about the fall, but now there's talk about releasing it in January. So I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think they're just going to try to find the right, the optimum time to release it.
Yep.
So it probably depends on their other artist schedule. I mean, I'd like it to come out in the fall because
Sure.
it's a great record and I want everyone to hear it. Obviously, you can't release it too late because then you have the holidays and you never want to release an album in
Sure.
November, December. So,
okay. Well, I want to officially invite both of you back when that record's coming out because I love Lana's music. And I hope people pick up on that and go check out her many records. And there's some great videos. There's some live stuff over the years that I've enjoyed on YouTube. By the way, we always make sure, folks, that you can find these artists and you can find their Bandcamp and their website and all that. So we have the links in the chat. But what's really great is it's really easy. ErikNorlander.com, LanaLane.com, LANALANE. Very easy. And thank you both for having great websites. And I say that, without, I'm not kidding, because so many artists, it's like 2 pages and it's old, and I love that you got a lot of info in there, everything you're doing. So folks, please follow up on all this hard work, both of those websites. Okay, that's great. So tell us a little bit about that record. Like, was some of it done before pandemic, or the whole thing was locked down, or what was the?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm really good at keeping a notebook of ideas, and when I say notebook, that's sort of a euphemism for, storage methods in general. I do actually have a notebook with ideas. I have a staff paper notebook with things charted out, and then I have my voice memos app on my iPhone where I just record. Here's an idea. Oh, here's a line. Here's this, and so I just have this well of ideas. So when it came time to do the record, basically I just went to the well and said, okay, what do we have? And we put together, music from that. And Lana had written some really nice things. And then we have a very good friend, Mark McCrite, who I actually went to high school with, believe it or not, back in the previous century. And he has co-written a lot of Lana songs. Mark is the singer and guitarist in Rocket Scientist. Mm-hmm. Mark has co-written a lot of Lana's material, like Queen of the Ocean, the title track to that album, Guardian Angel, Tears of Babylon, lots of great songs that he's written. So he wrote some new material for her. And we actually demoed that. That was the first stuff we demoed for the album. And that was actually done back in 2018. And then, life got in the way as usual. And we ended up doing a bunch of other stuff, including like the Prague Stock Festival in 2019, which was
Great.
the final show of Rocket Scientists, actually. Right. And so then again, when we started Lana's album in earnest in May of this year, we went back to those demos that we'd done with Mark a few years ago. We went to my well with the notebook, the notebook, and in probably 3 weeks we wrote the whole record. And then I like to make really nice pre-production demos so that everyone that's playing on it knows exactly what the song is supposed to sound like, and here's how many bars it is, and here's how many bars in the intro, and here's how many bars in the solo, and all of that. I chart everything out too. So I basically set up a Dropbox folder, and okay, here's demos of the whole record, here's charts of the whole record, and we put together the musician lineup that we wanted, which is Greg Ellis on drums, who is the fellow who drummed with us at Progstock.
Progstock, okay.
A great drummer that I've worked with. He's on most of my solo albums. Greg Ellis on drums, Jeff Coleman on guitar, who you met when we played in Asheville.
In Asheville,
a couple
right?
years ago. You were quite the gentleman in providing him a Marshall JCM 2000.
Oh, I forgot. That's right.
Which was awesome because we couldn't always get a great amp.
Yeah.
Road there. So Jeff is playing with Alan Parsons.
Yes, I see him on social media. He's got amazing player and a lot of great gigs. Yeah. Okay, Parsons.
He's an amazing player. Then our friend Mark McCright, who I mentioned from Rocket Scientist, is also playing guitar. He's doing a lot of acoustic stuff, as well as some lap steel on the record, and even some mandola parts, like giant mandolin, which works really nice. Then Don Schiff is playing bass and NS stick, the Ned Steinberg Chapman hybrid instrument. He actually has the very first one that was ever made, and so he's used that on Lana's records and Rocket Scientist records and my records over the years, and here it is again. And in fact, last year, Don actually lost his home in one of the California wildfires.
Oh, man.
He lived in Napa and had this beautiful home overlooking Lake Berryessa, and it got him. Yeah. And he was able to, obviously he got out safely with his family, and he was able to take his best instruments.
Right.
But, look at all the crap we acquire over the years. So he lost that.
No, my heart goes out to him. I'm sorry to hear that, and so many other musicians. That's. I toured with Mike Garson, the piano player from Bowie.
Yeah, sure. One of the greatest.
Lost his whole, So it's we give thanks when you wake up every day and your shit's still but okay, so
I don't want to make this a commercial for Progstock because I keep bringing it up, but it was a really cool festival, and I really liked the people involved.
Yeah.
And I have to say that the fire, Don losing his house happened probably 6 months or so after we did that festival, and there was a GoFundMe campaign that his nephew set up, and of course we all donated and we put the word out, and I have to say I was super impressed at the number of people from the Progstock community
That's great.
Like our friend Assad that lives up here in Lake Tahoe near us. Right. He was right there, and not only with money, but what can I do? How can I help? And all that. And Rita and so many others from that organization that really stepped up. So, and they knew Don for 6 months.
Right.
It's not like they were lifelong friends or something. Sure. So I just want to point out or shout out, as the kids say, how cool.
No, a big shout out, and I'll second that. And thank you. I happened to be fortunate enough to be at that gig. That was a great gig. And, we were talking about Michelle Mokusa, our dear friend, earlier, and she was at that gig. And so that was a great gig. And there was that vibe, because you said, this is it, this is the final. But really great, what a great orchestral, that's the word that kept coming to mind to me, because things just changed and moved and very dynamic. And I want to talk about that a little bit as we jump around your style, which I love and which is so informed for me with that background of orchestral music and soundtrack kind of glory and bigness. So the Lana record, that's a great snapshot. And as I said, let's have you all back in a few months when that record,
I should just give you one little more anecdote about that.
Please.
Because it's kind of cool. And it ties into the long monotonous story I was telling you before that. When we did the Dukes of the Orient album in 2019, we recorded it at John Payne's studio in Las Vegas. And you know, some people have a house with a studio attached. Well, John has a studio with a house attached. Basically turned his house into a recording studio.
Wow.
And it's this you know, wild Las Vegas crazy house, just with all these, you know, weird colors and lots of black and lots of stone and, you know, concrete and all that, which, by the way, makes a really good sounding drum room.
You know,
So
sure.
what is that? What is that? Is it called The Farm, the famous, the Genesis one that they got?
Surrey.
Something like the Hugh Padgham drum sound that they used on Peter Gabriel album, and then of course on the Phil Collins, you know,
Right.
bop, 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 whatever that song is.
No cymbals and a concrete wall. Yeah.
That's right. Anyway, John's room sounds a lot like that, and so you get this killer drum sound, and it's very ambient, but it's very short, so it's tight, and so the drums stay clear even though they're big and roomy, which are usually two things that fight each other. It's like, well, do you want it to be, you know, sharp and crisp, or do you want it to be big and roomy? You can't have both, you know, choose one. Well, with this room, you kind of get both. So for that record, we ended up working with this great drummer in Vegas named Frank Klepacki, who does some live stuff with John. And I just love the drum sound. And I thought, you know, for Lana's record, that's where I want to record. So, you know, we live up in Northern California near Lake Tahoe. And so Lana and I, we drove down to LA, stayed the night there. We picked up Greg Ellis in Hollywood. He lives in the Hollywood Hills, right under the Hollywood sign. And we drove out to Las Vegas and we cut the drums there. And then Jeff Coleman flew in from Indiana and with the guitars there as well. And this was like the first like actual communal music interaction we'd had since the pandemic.
Right. This was when? What month was that? In the fall.
The end of May, beginning of June, like 2.5 months ago.
Right.
1.5 months ago.
Yeah.
Not long ago.
Right.
So it was great. It was like, oh man, we get to do something. We get to get in the car and like go drive to a studio and go out to dinner and amazing. Yeah, it's great.
That's a great story.
Now, yeah, so that's it. I just wanted to get that in there, and then.
Yeah. Anyway. No, any anecdotes you want, bro. It's your night. Let's. I always got to make sure we give some love to the folks who stopped in, and there's quite a few people on now, and there will be people watching in the future. But let me say hello here, Cheryl Griffith. How are you, Sharon? How are you? Hey, Robiwan is here. I love that rhymes with
right. With Robert.
That's right. It rhymes with Obi-Wan. But Robert, love watching his videos all the time too. Brian Schiller, thanks. Say again?
I'm an idiot. I don't see where is the chat? I don't see it.
Oh, it's on YouTube. So,
on YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to pull it up because I'll get like a time-space continuum.
It'll distract
like
you.
Loop. Right.
But
okay.
I'll pass on anything. Thank you so much, folks. Oh, by the way, how are my vocals better, folks? Someone said I was a little low and I turned up a bit. Just let me know if there's some technical stuff. Dean Matson, how are my vocals? We've got the front of house man from Yes here, so I better straighten up and fly right with my audio here.
Wait a minute. Wait, how often do I have this chance? Dean?
Yes.
Turn up the keyboards.
That's great. Dean, both channels.
Jeff's got some great sounds. Turn them up.
Get them louder. Should we get one more analog synth in there in Jeff's rig? What do you think? He needs
more
an
of
Uno Pro. Well, we're going to come to the Uno in a few minutes. I wanted to just let's go back to the beginning, and I just want to get a snapshot of this. As a lot of folks know, you're from Hollywood. You just mentioned Hollywood and living under the Hollywood sign, which some people literally do sometimes. But,
I don't, but Greg, the drummer, does.
Right, I understand. Did you know, sidebar, the guy who wrote Nature Boy, I forget the name right now, do you know he actually was like this hippie in the 40s and he lived there by the sign? You know that, right?
Well, now I know Nat King Cole was kind of like the famous guy that recorded that.
He did it.
Yes. He didn't write it.
He didn't write it. People should look this up because it's a sidebar.
Okay.
But yes, he actually came to a Nat King Cole show and like tugged on the sleeve of his manager or something. I got this song, and I think yes. But he was this kind of natural foods, raw foods, hippie guy, barefoot, lived out in the tents and stuff by the Hollywood sign. You can't make this stuff up, folks. So look that up. But Hollywood, let's segue back to Erik Norlander being born in Hollywood, another composer, but he wrote a lot more music than this guy. But Erik studied jazz and classical music when he was young, and you have a degree in English literature, which I find fascinating. I know you've done a lot of writing. Talk to me about that spark, though. I'm always interested in that moment when you were studying piano and then studying, and you said, when did you hear a synthesizer? Let's just say that. When did you say, that's it, I gotta play one of those? What was that moment?
I'm going to answer all of those questions. So, so first of all, I was born in Hollywood. I never lived in Hollywood. I was born in Hollywood because my dad worked at the Griffith Park Observatory. And anyone, if you've seen any movie in the last 50 years that has an observatory, it's probably that. It's like the three domes, and it's like super famous. And he was a lecturer there, the guy that, did the astronomy show. Like, now, the sun rises in the east, and the Pleiades are in the, northern sky. And, there was the giant projector that, did all that cool stuff. And then, later on, they brought in Laserium, which was one of the first like laser shows. Anyway, so he worked at the Griffith Observatory. He wasn't exactly a rocket scientist, but, worked at the observatory. It's pretty cool. And so my mom was there with him at the observatory. And then it was time for me to be born. And so they went to the closest hospital, and it was Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital on, what is that street up there? Not Western, maybe it's on Western, but like, one of those right by Griffith Park, Los Feliz, going into Hollywood. And so that's how I was born in Hollywood. So there you go. But going
That's
on.
That's amazing. And just to interject, my brain just went, because of course, so much of your music and some of the things you talk about, it has so much to do with space and space travel and the stars and this really awesome on point astronomy stuff. So I didn't know that. That's fantastic. Your dad, yeah.
It was great, yeah. And he was an awesome guy, and he didn't stay in that business for long. I think he eventually became a stockbroker and, had a more like mainstream job and all of that. And he passed away in 2016, a few years before your father as well. And we talked obviously about that.
That's right.
Quite a bit. And that's a transformative thing when you lose your dad, especially when you're close,
Yeah. No, it's.
But let's talk about happy things.
Yeah, and we have the happiness of great dads. So that's they're shining down. So what was that moment where what record did you hear, or where did you go, that's it, I gotta have one of those, or what was?
I think the first like heavy synth album I heard was an album called On the Third Day by ELO, Electric Light Orchestra. And there was, in particular, there was this track called Daybreaker that was, this kind of just instrumental rock shuffle that had just these, cool, modulating synth parts.
Right.
And then there's some other songs on the record, that had some cool synth stuff as well. And then I really got into ELO, and I just loved ELO. And that's actually how I discovered Emerson, Lake and Palmer, because I didn't understand that ELO and ELP were two different bands.
Right.
When I was a kid, when I was 12 years old, and so I ended up buying an ELP album. Right. And I'm like, wow, they sound really different on this record. But but it was, I think the one I got was Pictures at an Exhibition, and which just rules. I mean, that's just one of the greatest albums of all time.
Oh,
And
incredible.
and so I got into ELP that way, and then friends of mine were like, "Oh man, if you like Keith Emerson, you got to check out Rick Wakeman." I'm like, "Oh, who's that?" And then I started getting into Yes and his solo albums, and it just kind of happened organically. And then when I was in high school, a local music store had some kind of cheap Roland synthesizers. They had this thing called the Roland RS-09, which is the organ strings. It's basically a string machine.
Right.
And then this mono synth called the SH-09, which was I think it was a single oscillator monophonic analog synth with a sub oscillator. And then if you had the two of them, you could run the string machine, the RS-09, into the filter of the SH-09 and get like paraphonic, synth stuff.
Right.
So I couldn't afford that as a 16-year-old kid, but one of the kids in the high school band, trumpet player, he ended up getting that pair, the RS-09 and SH-09, and played around with them, and he kind of lost interest in them. And I ended up saving up some money, and through some artful negotiation, I was able to buy them from him.
Oh,
and
okay.
I just thought, oh my God, it's a synthesizer. This is just the coolest thing in the world. It's like barely a synthesizer. We're pushing the boundaries of what
of the definition.
A synthesizer, but I mean, it had a filter that went, and there we go.
That's it. So this was your first quote unquote synth.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the RS-09. It looks like, is there an RS-09 down there? Looks like you got one. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was it. And so I had a band in high school, and we played Yes songs and Rush songs. We played Xanadu by Rush. It's like, yeah, sure, just play one of the hardest songs there is. And then, of course, as happens in high school, we lost our bass player, and so then I'm like, oh, okay, I'll do it. I'll cover the bass parts. And so I ended up, playing again. Sure, just pick any bass player to cover.
Right, just Geddy.
Just cover Geddy Lee parts, no problem. But we like to reach, high.
Yeah.
But yes, we used to play Xanadu by Rush with keyboards, guitar, and drums.
That's great. Well, it's only fair because Geddy was sneaking into the keyboard territory with the bass. Oh,
I loved his keyboard parts. I think he was I think he's one of my favorite keyboard players.
Likewise. And we were talking the other day on a workshop that I do. There's this new Oberheim that came out, and we were talking about that massive Oberheim rig he had, right? I think it was an 8-voice. So cutting edge. I mean, he had his people like Tony Geranios, who's brilliant, coming up with polyphonic synthesis and making it happen. Wow. So okay, that's a great. That's ELO and ELP, and it's one letter different, and that's a great start. You're gonna
when you're 12 years old, you don't know.
It's awesome. No, and that's really special because I think I met you. Speaking of Keith Emerson, you came to Emerson Lake. Is that when we met? I can't. It's a blur, but Keith Emerson.
I never saw the Emerson Lake thing, unfortunately, but I know where we met. Okay. And it was a weird place. We actually met at the Music Messe in Germany in 2009, I believe, 2008 or 2009.
9, yes.
Okay, 2009.
Or 10, yeah.
Okay, but one of those years.
Yeah.
I think it was 2009.
No, you're right, 9.
Because Lana and I took a vacation, and I think it was actually the last vacation, like real vacation we took. And we went to Stockholm, Sweden. Right. And on the way, we said, okay, well, let's stop in and we're going to visit some friends in Germany, and then we're going to go to the Music Messe in Frankfurt. And when you fly from the US to Stockholm, you end up going through Frankfurt, at least on, I don't know what it was, KLM or Northwest Airlines, one of those back then. And you were demoing the Moog guitar.
Right.
So I remember coming to the Music Messe, and I think we just ended up talking, and then I saw you again would it have been at, what was it called? Modus Operandi, the big thing we did in Asheville at the Orange Peel?
Yes, there was well, one of those. I was there for the other Moog thing, I think, with Michelle. I don't think I was there for the one when you brought the giant modular and
Okay.
all that. Yeah, but
well, we met in Asheville.
Yeah, right.
Because I ended up going there quite a bit for various things.
Sure,
but
sure. That's awesome. No, well, that's some great memories, and now I remember why I was terrified. I'm sitting there with a synth guitar, and here's Erik Norlander. But right, that was a pretty amazing trade show. Okay, so that's a great. I didn't know some of those pieces of the, and I always love to find out like what someone first heard, and wow, that actual ELO track, that album, and then boom, it goes from there. I want to jump. I do a lot of jump cuts, but I want to jump to some equipment and to some recent stuff, because as I look in your, we're seeing part of your studio there, obviously. There's a lot of cool stuff, and I think, do I see an EMS way in the back corner there? Is that a?
Let's see if I can do this. Right there at the top of the pen.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. That is the right EMS VCS3.
Dude, how long have you had that?
I've had it for about maybe 10 years, something like that.
Wow, that's
12 years. And I actually have the DK2 key for it as well, which it's leaning up against the wall. You can't see it because my Eurorack, my mono rocket Eurorack case is kind of blocking the view.
Right. That's wow. Well, a holy grail piece, and rest in peace, Peter Zinoviev, actually just about 3 weeks ago. Any of you synth heads, if you don't know who that is, that's a guy and a company that really doesn't get the spotlight as much as so many other wonderful companies. English company, and look them up. I'm not going to spend too much time on it here, but the EMS sound because of Doctor Who and The Who. I think that's funny. And Eno used it with Roxy Music and Pink Floyd on the Run. So in a way, I would argue it's the synth most people on Earth know that don't know anything about synth music, because it's on the Run. Isn't that funny?
It's the great British synthesizer, right?
Yeah.
And on the Run, it's all the black keys on the piano. You just like sequence those 5 notes,
right?
And then you have on the Run.
Yeah, no, it's so great. I love that you have one, and I'm sure we've heard it on all kinds of things. But let's jump ahead a bit. You've done some incredible sound and synth design, and I want to stop off with the Alesis Andromeda, because that's still what a classic and amazing synth, and it was groundbreaking. Because tell us about that. It was the first.
Right there.
There it is.
At the top of the pen. That's the Andromeda.
There it is. Tell me, the correct description would be, it was the first polyphonic analog in many, many years, right? When that came out, it was the only one.
Yeah. I mean, it was surely the first serious analog polysynth that had come out. Gosh, I'm trying to think what would have come out before. I mean, there was the hybrid, digital synths with analog filters, like the Yamaha. I mean, like the Insonic ESQ1 and the Korg DW8000 and things like that. But as far as like true analog, I mean, you'd have to go back to like the Oberheim Matrix 12.
Right.
And by the way, that was our benchmark, because back at Alesis, we worked closely with Marcus Ryle. And Marcus was, of course, the software designer for Oberheim. And he did the Matrix 12. He did before that the OB8. I don't know if he was involved in the OBXA, but he would have come on board right around that time. And of course, the great story is that he wrote the software for the DSX sequencer, the big blue box that looks like the drum machine, when he was 19 years old.
I didn't know that. No, I met Marcus in his Line 6 years. What a brilliant guy. But I'm adding to the brilliance that I know of when you say that. 19 years old. Jeez.
So I had this great idea. So anyway, at Alesis, we had made these very successful digital synths. We made this instrument called the QS8.
Right.
And of course there's a QS7 and QS6, which were smaller versions. QSR was the rack version. And that enabled us to do some more experimental things. And Keith Barr, the owner of Alesis, who is this amazing engineer, he actually worked for MXR prior to that, and he designed the Distortion Plus and the Phase 90. I mean, like some of these super classic MXR pedals. So he started off as an analog guy, and then he got into digital, designing what are called ASICs, which stands for Application Specific Integrated Circuit. And so he made like one for reverb, and then he made the MIDI verb and all that, and then of course they designed the ADAT, which changed modern recording.
Sure.
And they made ASICs for these digital synthesizers. And so the company was flush with cash and able to do some more crazy things. I was at his house for, I think it was Christmas Eve, 1995 or somewhere around then, 96. And we had a bottle of J&B Scotch. And Keith and I sat down with a bottle of J&B Scotch, and he's like, Eric, what do you want to do? What should we do next? I'm like, well, we should do an analog synth. He's like,
right.
Who's going to buy an analog synth in 1995?
Sure.
I said, a lot of people are going to buy an analog synth. And by the way, we should make a poly synth. Oh my God, why do you want to make a poly synth? I'm like, Keith, because you know how to make chips. You know how to make ASICs. You can design the ASIC for this. And then the bottle, went down, and you could make it, oscillators and filters, because those Curtis chips, that's
sure.
Those are okay, but they don't make SSM chips anymore, which were better but not available. You should make a chip, Keith. And so he's like, okay, let's do it. So thanks to J&B Scotch and the success of some previous products there, we were able to do it. And so I arranged a meeting at the NAMM show, which is always in January. So a few weeks after this, with my team that I wanted to develop it. And so I accosted Bob Moog at the Keyboard Magazine breakfast. And I said, hey, Bob, you don't know me. My name is Erik Norlander. We're designing a new analog synthesizer. We'd love to talk to you about it. He's like, okay. So I had Bob Moog, and then I had Marcus Ryle, who I was convinced, Marcus is going to do the software. And so I had this meeting at the Alesis booth at NAMM 1996 or 1997 with this like luminary cast. I had Keith Barr, this genius engineer who founded Alesis, Bob Moog, and Marcus Ryle. And so I said, okay, guys, here's what we're going to do. We're doing this new analog polysynth. We want to do these custom chips for it. Bob, I want you to be the electrical designer, and Marcus, I want you to write the software. And so we had this great meeting, and Keith was like, talking to Bob. So, what is this famous transistor ladder filter, I've heard about so much. And Bob's like, oh, it's this. And he grabs a notepad and like draws the filter. And I have that drawing somewhere. In fact, I've told Michelle Moe for years about this because I need to find it and give it to her for the
archives. Museum.
So
yeah,
it's here somewhere. I will find it. Anyway, as it turned out, Bob Moog was already working on the Voyager, the Vinny Moog Voyager, and so he couldn't be involved in the project. Marcus Ryle was starting a new company called Line 6 that he didn't really know about, and so he couldn't be involved in the project. So I didn't get any of those guys, but I did have the one meeting like with them. We should have taken a photo. I have a photo actually of Bob and me, I think, from we went out drinks. We went out drinks that night, and I think there's a photo of that. But we ended up building it with a different team, with a woman named Julie Yarborough, who's an awesome analog engineer. She was in the Bob Moog seat. And then Rob Rampley, who's another awesome software engineer. He and a couple of other guys ended up doing the code. And a lot of other guys on the team at that time were super instrumental. Taiho Yamada ended up being the product manager for it. A guy named Mike Peake, who's a brilliant synthesist, was involved in that, and a fellow named Randy Lee. Hope I'm not forgetting, right? David Bryce. David Bryce was on the marketing side. He came up with the name Andromeda, and I just wanted to call it A6 because at the time that was the naming convention. Like we had QS8, which was quadrasynth 88 notes, and so QS8, and I thought, okay, A6 for analog 6 because it was 61 notes. But even better, it was a pun because it used these application-specific integrated circuits, which are called ASICs. It's like A6.
Right.
And David Bryce was like, dude, do you know how nerdy that no one's going to get that? What are you, crazy? And so he came up with the name Andromeda. Thankfully, he did.
So that wasn't your love of space and astronomy and all that, Andromeda. It's just
That was David Bryce going, come on, man.
Yeah.
You know, classic synths, they're called like Jupiter and Juno.
Yeah.
You know, got to call it some, satellites and, Taurus.
I love it.
That's just my David Bryce impersonation, by the way. It's not very good.
It's a synth that, folks, it's a holy grail. If you can find one, pawn shop or Reverb or a garage sale, if you're lucky, they're out there. But it's an incredible, very unique sounding synth, and it's monstrous. And every time I've seen Erik, there it is. It's part of the picture. Well, let's jump ahead to some recent stuff. As you said, you do a lot of software sound design. You've done that through the years for many companies. A lot of stuff with Alesis and some of their drum modules, all kinds of stuff. But I want to jump to IK Multimedia because that's who you've done a lot of recent stuff with. You just mentioned some of the software. But let's take a look and kind of go chronologically. A few years ago, this was groundbreaking too, because at the price point it was, I think it was about under $200, and another analog, monophonic this time, but a full-on analog machine. I have one. Full disclosure, folks, I love IK Multimedia, and actually here on the channel we're going to do a highlight on the next synth we'll look at. But let me say, I have taken this little thing around the world because you can run it on a phone charger battery, like a USB, and plug your headphones in. I've tracked with it. I can't say enough about it for somebody that just wants to add a small little synth that will blow the doors off. So talk about this and lead us into the Pro.
Yeah. So you also got one for the great Don Preston. And I remember,
that's right. We bought him a birthday gift. He loves it.
That was cool. I did a gig with Don, as you'll remember. What was that, Moke Fest 2009, 2010 at BB King's? It was the last one.
Right.
Don played there.
Yeah.
Along with Herb Deutsch.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so Uno Synth. So I'd been working with IK Multimedia on digital stuff. Like I made some sound libraries for Sample Tank 3 at the time. I made this cinematic percussion and orchestral percussion library. And I got kind of tuned into what the company was about. And on the hardware side, they're very much about mobile things, portable things.
Right.
They made this thing called the iRig, which is a guitar interface for your iPhone.
Yeah.
And the idea is you plug your guitar into that, you plug the iRig into your phone, you use their amplitude modeling software, and you have a full amp and effects suite in your iPhone. Yeah. And this was back like in iPhone 3 days, iPhone
That's
4
right.
or something like that.
Oh,
it was like revolutionary.
Really?
And that kind of got them going in the hardware business. And so Enrico Iori, the owner of IK, is this awesome designer. And he had always wanted to do a synth. And especially as he got to know me, and I'm, just oozing synth nerddom.
Yes, you are.
Be cool to do, a synth with IK. And he's like, well, what is a synth? And so I basically like explained, okay, so you have oscillators, they go into filters, and then you have envelopes that control the filters, and you have a VCA, which is like volume, and the envelopes control that. And so we started working on some design ideas for what became the Uno Synth, and obviously not just us. There's a great team of people there. And we came up with this idea for the Uno Synth. And this little box is going to cost $199. Originally, we wanted it to cost $99, but that was a little too much. But we thought, okay, what are the essentials of an analog synth? Okay, so how we need to do, good sounding oscillators and a good sounding filter. But can we do this with few knobs and just like a little matrix interface? And then Enrico came up with this idea for this capacitance sensing interface. So as you can tell from the photos, there's no actual buttons on it, no switches. It's all capacitance sensing, like your iPhone. Basically the same principle as that. So instead of pressing on glass, you're pressing on this plastic overlay, and you're basically touching contacts on the printed circuit board underneath that. So the only actual switch on it is the power switch on the back. Other than that, everything is capacitance sensing, and that enabled it to be $199.
Brilliant.
Those are my hands, by the way, right there.
Oh, how about that? And actuality, it really is, I think, revolutionary. And I always suggest it to people as an add-on, because no matter what keyboard you play, throw one on top. You've got an analog synth, so it's a great starting point.
Yeah, the if you can see the profile of it there on the right, it tilts up a little bit.
Right.
But that also acts as kind of like a little hook, so you can put it on the back of a larger keyboard, like a Montage or a Triton, or there you go, like that.
Yeah, there you go.
That's actually, what is that? That's a Juno 106. I was in Italy, I forget, for some other reason, and they wanted to do photo shoot with that. So fortunately, all these last pictures are me. The earlier ones were someone else, but we just like went into these various rooms like there at the company, and you could see the red from their cool red leather furniture there,
right?
And just took all these shots.
Yeah. No, it's great, and I love that it's in a bunch of different settings, and you make a good. Sorry.
I've never seen this photo before, but I recognize it. That's taken at Super Booth in Berlin, in Germany, probably in 2017.
Right.
Let's say. No, 2018. Sorry, 2018. Yeah. That's when it was debuted. And that's IK always has the booth that's like right inside the door there. So you go out the door and across the little park here, and there's a nice little table where we have lunch and meetings and all that. So
yeah, no, that's
often people, I can recognize Berlin from the table on the lawn.
And I've never seen this picture either. And as I was saying, you can run it off a little power bank, a little thing like that. So and there's some software to edit. So that's kind of a setup for, and that did really well. And I see them all around. But then that wasn't good enough. What did you all do a year and a half ago when it was time to go back to the drawing board?
Right.
So tell us about
So the idea behind the Uno Synth was the analog synth for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, it's $199. I was trying to pull it up. We used to spend more than that, for sound cartridges,
right.
for keyboards. Like if you wanted to buy a cartridge for your DX7, that cost $199.
Mm-hmm.
And so this whole synth is $199. Now everyone can afford a real analog synth.
Yeah.
So it was, continuous shape, oscillators, two oscillators into a two-pole state variable filter, sort of like somewhere between the Oberheim SCM and maybe half of the Korg MS-20. Was an OTA filter with bandpass, high pass, and low pass modes. Anyway, the analog synth for everyone. So then what are we going to do next? All right, well, everyone, of course, as synthesists are. We tend not to focus on what it is, but what it isn't. It's
Yes.
like, man, come on! It's only got a 2-pole filter. It doesn't have a 4-pole filter. Oh, it's only got 2 oscillators. Man, the Mini Moog has 3 oscillators,
Yeah.
etc. And so, think of what's the character, the Simpsons comic book store guy. Think of that guy.
Exactly.
Right. And so it's like, oh, it doesn't have an external end to the filter, and it doesn't have this. Doesn't have, I'm like, yeah, okay, guys, it's $199. It's like this small, compact, like super cool thing. Anyway, so we thought, okay, great, we did it. Now let's do the pro version. So if you are, pro touring guy, what do you want? You want more oscillators? You want more complicated filter architecture? You want effects? You want gate CD I/O so you can interface with modular stuff? You want a modulation matrix? All of that. And so, we designed the Uno Synth Pro from there. And again, not just me. I mean, it's a big team.
A team of people, sure.
But I will say, and I actually shot a video here in this room. What's interesting about it is, so you have a complex oscillator that does sync and pulse width modulation and FM and all of that, and free oscillators, and then the modulation matrix. And what's particularly groundbreaking about the Uno Synth Pro is it has a dual filter configuration, so 2 filters. And then and the filters can be routed in serial or parallel, in or out of phase. And between all that, you basically have 24 different filter modes available. And then there are 3 digital effects blocks, as well as an analog overdrive section. And if all this sounds a little bit familiar to any synth users in the audience, it's because that's largely the specification of the Alesis Andromeda from 20 years before. Dual filters. We had basically our version of 2-pole state variable filter into a transistor ladder style low-pass filter in the Andromeda, and then of course a modulation matrix in honor of Marcus Rahl's Matrix 12, which was kind of the first synth to do that. We didn't get Marcus, but we did get his modulation matrix, so that worked out okay. And then the effects and the gate CD I/O and all that stuff from the Andromeda is in the Uno Synth Pro. And pick it up. Look, here it is. This is the keyboard, and there's also a desktop version, as you pointed out. And I made a video actually, sitting in front of like the modular, my modular Moog system with the Andromeda, with my Matrix 12 and Prophet 5. And I basically said, okay, so here's the story of synths. So, and the VCS3 was in it. It's like, okay, Mini Moog came out and it was this. And then, by the way, we did that in the Uno Synth Pro. Okay, and then, Prophet 5 came out and it used these, chips from this company called SSM, this awesome guy named Dave Rossum. Oh, by the way, he has a new company called SSI, and they're making these chips again. That's what's in here. Okay, SSI chips.
Right.
And then there was the Oberheim Matrix 12, and it had the modulation matrix. Modulation matrix. Okay, and then, later on, I got to work on the Alesis Andromeda, and it had dual filters, and then digital effects. Okay, and that's in here. So it's just this kind of cheeky video where it's like, okay, everything that went into
the history.
The history. So that's on YouTube. So check it out. Our friend Erik Nielsen shot that video. You know Erik.
I love Erik, and well, we're a multimedia show here. We have that queued up. Let's show. I'm going to put the link up. I'm going to put the link up and let people watch it on their own time. But let's get a preview.
I'm Erik Norlander, one of the designers of the new Uno Synth Pro. The Uno Synth Pro is a powerful musical instrument and production tool for the 21st century artist. It's able to recreate a massive number of historical analog flavors in a super compact, ultra portable design. This is thanks to an advanced analog architecture with 3 discrete continuous shape oscillators into a dual filter design, going into leading-edge studio quality IK effects. Okay, this all sounds great, of course, but beyond the specs, I want to give you some insight into our actual vision for the product.
That's awesome. So just a preview there, folks. I mean, you know, and this is what this man does. I mean, he's been doing sound design and now hardware synth design for many years. But I want to pause here because what I think is really cool, and I've had the pleasure of hanging out with Erik at trade shows, and we were at KnobCon right before the shutdown, and what I had a guest 2 weeks ago, and out of all my guests, there's a little similarity here. I had Tony Rolando, who's the president of Make Noize, and what you both have that I really appreciate is you bring so much history into the design, and Tony, it's 2 different worlds. He's doing this modular thing, and he's doing all this Buchla influence thing, and East Coast too. But he goes back to 1896 with the history and Hans Martineau and Theremin and all that. And you, go ahead.
You and I toured the Make Noize factory in Asheville.
That's right. We went over there. Sure.
I think you introduced me to Tony, actually.
I brought you over to Make Noize. I live a mile and a half away, so anyone like you, I make sure. That's true. I forgot. Man, my memory tonight. But thank you for having an incredible memory.
Yeah, right.
This stuff. But I want to point out to people what's going on in a picture like this, because first off, this is this man's gear. This isn't like a setup. As he said before, look at this gear, eye candy. You've got Mini Moog and the EMS, and of course we talked about the Alesis before. And what's that? A memory Moog in the back, or
Prophet 5?
Which one?
Prophet 5.
Prophet 5, of course, in the back, yeah. And then a matrix on the behind you. And some Oberheim modules and your modular. Talk to us a little bit about the giant modular and some of the, and as you said, you bring all of these cool little things into what you do, design. Talk to us a little bit about, that massive modular for a second.
So, I met Keith Emerson in the early 90s. There was something called Envision Interactive in Palo Alto Valley, and they made sound libraries for the Akai S1000 and Emulator 3, Emulator 4,
right
around. And they had gotten together with Bill Alexander, made a sample library of Keith Emerson modular Moog. And so they'd done all these samples of it, looped them. They're like, okay, so we made the emulator version. We want to put out it in a Akai S1000 format. We need a guy that knows, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and knows the Akai S1000. And so then they met me somehow. I think it was actually had something to do with Alesis. And so they asked me, would you voice it for the S1000 for this library? Because, what is the Venn diagram where you need to know the S1000 and you need to know Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And so that's probably not a number of people in 1992 or whatever. So I did the voicing for it, and it was fine. It was all memory, of course. So they were like the most glorious sounds in the world. But you got the the Tarkus lead, it sounded like the Tarkus lead. You got the Trilogy lead, it sounded like the Trilogy lead. So I programmed this, and at the NAMM show, oh, Erik, we want you to meet Keith. I'm like, oh my God, it's Keith Emerson. I met him, and he was super cool and gracious, and we just kind of became friends. Like, well, once again, prog keyboard players that like, cool analog synth sound. Okay, he's like the most legendary in the world, and I'm just like this kind of up and coming kid. But again, if you think about the Venn diagram, how many people are there in the world that actually have these interests?
Yeah.
And then a few years later, I was doing the sample set for what became the Alesis QS8. And I did most of the sample sessions for that. And we needed synth sounds. And I thought, okay, well, we need a sawtooth wave, or, detuned sawtooth waves or square wave. Let's get the best sounding synths in the world. And I called up Keith and I said, hey, Keith, can I rent your modular Moog? He's like, oh, no one's ever asked me that. Well, sure, we can arrange that. So you'd like to hire the Moog? It's called your Moog, Keith.
Right.
Yes. Okay, well, we'll arrange. Let's get the Moog over. So I had his.
That's perfect.
World's most dangerous my studio for. Oh, my impersonation.
Oh, so good. Chilling.
All right. So I had it for about a month, and did all these cool samples and really figured out how to work it. I'd never used a modular Moog synth before. It's not like they're common. But I was working with it. I'm like, this is the best sounding synth I've ever heard, no question. And as a 23-year-old kid or something, I thought, I have got to get me one of these.
Yeah, as you do.
But probably 25. Anyway, so I set about trying to find a modular Moog system. And I found a small one. It was a 3C system. No, 3C, right. Which is 3 rows, wood cabinet from 1967. So a super early system.
Right.
And most of the modules were from April of 1967, and I was born in July of 1967, so it was just like a little bit older than me, which is perfect. And it was in terrible shape. It had been in a garage for decades. And, I don't even know if it turned on. And I bought it for some ridiculous amount of money back then, with I don't know, $6,000.
Oh my God! Wow.
How am I going to afford this? I'm going to sell my car.
Right.
I figured out some way to get it. I stole, I don't know. I figured out a way. And I spent 5 years restoring it. And there was a great tech in LA named Kevin Leitner, worked on a lot of stuff, who passed away a few years ago, unfortunately. And then Julie Yarbrough, who worked on the Andromeda, basically did a lot of work on that as well. And we built it into this giant road case, which showed on your screen. And I kept finding more modules. Like I found some in Europe, and I found Midwest, and I found some that had been in a barn fire. And so like the PCB was like cinched. It's like, I think we could clean that up, make that work, and just like put together modules. And, sometimes a module would cost $200 if you're lucky, and sometimes it would cost $2,000 if you could find one. I just kind of networked with people in that world and ended up with this giant 22 oscillator system you see there. And first went into service in the year 2000. It actually used it in the year 2000.
Right. That's an amazing story. I'm blown away. This is great. So many great stories and fleshing out things that I didn't know. But what a synth museum, folks, and and this is a man who is using them. They're not just sitting there. It's it's on these records. It's on these sample libraries and different things. Let's talk a little bit about some of where you do use it, because again, some of you have tuned in late. There's a new album we're all looking forward to by Lana Lane, who is an incredible singer, a composer, and Erik's other half happens to be. But she has got her own thing, her own music. Check her out. She's got this great range of videos on YouTube and a great bunch of albums you can find on her website. And we've put her website, very easy, lanalane.com and eriknorlander.com. Come on, you can't mess that up. And but we have them in the chat, and they have their Bandcamp. And we always urge folks, here we are. You can support artists directly through their website and through their available. So please do that. But Lana's new record is coming up soon. We're not going to say the title. We're not going to do. I don't know if you saw this, but Spike Lee blew the winner. I love Spike, but he was mortified. But we're going to keep the title secret. But that record's coming up. You have the Dukes of the Orient record, the Freak Show record, which I've only heard a couple tracks. Sounds great. I gotta grab that myself. But that's only a few months old, and since it came out in this cloud of where we are, folks, you might have missed it, but check that out as well. And let's talk about what you might be thinking for an Erik Norlander album, because I love the Surreal record, and that's a good, what is that, 4, 5 years old now, right? 3, 4 years?
Yeah, it's actually 5 years old.
5 years, wow. Oh, we lost a year there. I keep forgetting. All right, but so Surreal is awesome. That's a great record. What's on your mind for, an Erik record? Is that next year, or are you already? Is your notebook starting to get looked through? What's going on there?
Your notebook is bulging, so I have to get some music out of that. That sounded a little off color. Maybe I should rephrase that. Is that a metaphor? Is that your notebook?
Just happy to have that Prophet 5, yeah.
We talk about this a lot. I would love to do an EM album.
You'd love to do what, sorry?
An EM album, electronic music.
Yeah.
I made an album in 2004 called Seas of Orion. And that's the closest I've gotten to doing an EM album. And I actually did it on this European label called Alpha Centauri. No, I'm sorry. The label was called Quantum Records. And put on a festival called Alpha Centauri. And I played the festival in 2001. And I got to open up for Rick Wakeman, which was cool. We did the press conference ahead of time. And in typical Rick Wakeman style, during the press conference, while I was talking, he was heckling me the whole time.
Of course.
So, I was, what is it like, Erik, to play with the legendary Rick Wakeman? I'm like, it's such an honor. He's one of my heroes, and I probably wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for him. And he's leaning in and going, I'm sorry.
He's a riot. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, then I guess I did okay, because the festival asked me to come back and headline a few years later in 2004. And they said, what would be great is if you could make an album that we could release at the festival. And so I recorded this album, Orion, and it was just all keyboards and then some production from my friend Greg Ellis, who's on the Lana Lane album and who played with Rocket Scientists at Frogstock. And we did the album in like 2 weeks. Again, I just, pulled out my notebook and, like, okay, this idea. And I set up, all of these synths and kind of a phalanx in the studio. And I did this one kind of epic Berlin School piece called Adrift on the Fire Seas of Orion's Shield, a song which was nearly as long as the title.
Right.
And that's, I think, there's not a video for that, but it's available on Bandcamp.
Okay.
In fact, I think my whole catalog is on Bandcamp, and the Rocket Science is on Bandcamp. That's really the best place to buy downloads, in my opinion. We don't have the Lana Lane there yet, but I'm planning to put it up there. Lana's catalog is on iTunes and on Amazon.
Great.
But it's not on Bandcamp.
Okay.
Anyway,
my mistake there. Yeah.
Anyway, I'd love to do a legit EM album at some point. If only I had some synthesizers, then I could.
Let's make a few phone calls, because we'll try to help you out. We'll do a crowd search on that. No, well,
literally laying around.
Well, I heartily endorse that, because that's my jam. I love that whole world, and I know the bits I've heard of you doing pure EM, kind of instrumental, as you say, Berlin School, that deep, heavy stuff. I love when you do that. So I look forward to that. Happy to hear live on the air here that's on the burner. That's awesome. Well, let's see. We're going to bring this in for a landing in a few minutes, but see if there's any questions. If you have any questions, folks, we're going to wrap this soon. So if you got any questions for Erik. There was a question above. Tom Woolley is here. Hey, Tom Woolley. And Tom says, where'd you get the the CS80 shirt? Right. Well, first off, I had to geek out and wear this tonight. I mean, I'm here with one of the masters, and I said, you know what? But actually, on the back it says YamahaSynth.com, so it's from Yamaha. So you can reach out to Yamaha. Yeah.
And it has a typo on it. So
and it's a typo.
Worth more.
That's how amazing this man's history brain is for all things synthesis. Because as he pointed out, they didn't do dashes in their nomenclature, but whatever T-shirt designer, they just blew it. But what a great synth, and one of the classic synths. Do you have a CS80?
I don't.
You don't. That's one of the only ones.
I used to have a CS80.
Oh.
I used it on a lot of records. There's a rocket scientist called Oblivion Days, and it prominently featured that. That's probably the most it appeared. In fact, I think there's even a picture of me with the CS80 evoking my inner Eddie Jobson.
Yes, well, another one of our, someone we both grew up with, and someone I've had the pleasure to work for many years too, and Mr. CS80, as you said. Oh, as we bring this in for landing, so we got a couple of releases to think about, folks, and a couple we don't know about yet. So just, you know what to do. Go to the websites, get on mailing lists, and it's a time of direct support for artists. And so a couple things in that area. You had said, you're putting out records, you're putting out videos. There's these high production videos. You've got an amazing studio where you do production for other artists. But you said, you're happy it's out there and other people are doing it. You said you're not a fan for yourself of doing streaming and of live concerts. Tell us a little bit about that and just your thoughts on performing on as a lot of people have been doing.
So when the world changed in 2020 and streaming concerts became a big thing. And a lot of people did it. A lot of people did it very well. I was not into it. And I'm still not into it. And had a lot of friends ask me to do it. And, some benefit things that I turned down. There's a bunch of reasons why I don't like it. And I don't want to take anything away from the people that do it really well. For me, the biggest problem is, I'm just here in my studio and where I go to work every day, and it's kind of a weird place to do a performance from. I mean, I could do a performance on a record here. I could track a keyboard solo or play a piano part or something. But the idea of getting on live stream and doing some that's probably the first streaming performance I've ever done. And just
there you go.
Doing a gig, it just feels cold. It's like there's no interaction from anybody. Like we were saying before the show when we were doing the little sound check, when you're rehearsing with a band and one person walks into the rehearsal room that is not in the band, the vibe changes.
True.
Now you're playing for something. And there's interaction between the listener and the performer. And in the streaming world, there's no interaction. There's the chat, but even now the chat thing, I can't even see the chat thing. You can. It just feels like, how am I going to play in this spaceship in this astronaut suit, and have a vibe, like I'm playing an actual live gig.
Sure.
And there's so many people that do it, and a lot of them do it well. Some of them don't do it very well. I don't know. I feel like I would suck. Like if I just did like a solo synth thing or play the piano back there or something, it just feels weird to me.
Sure. No, that's
That's the main reason. It just
okay.
And then there's a whole other element. This would be a whole other show. We can't
Sure.
go into it now, but I also feel like it's sort of like the magic of music and of musicians has been eroded over the years.
Yeah.
When we were kids, we went to go see a concert, and we talked about Yes briefly. I listened to Yes as a kid growing up, and then the first time I ever saw John Anderson as other than on a Yes song movie or something like that was when I went to the Forum in Los Angeles when I was 16 years old, and then John Anderson walks out, and you're like, that's John Anderson. That's the guy I've been listening to for all these years. And look, he's larger than life. It's like, and it was this really special thing. And now with social media and all that, you can go, oh, here's John Anderson in his bathrobe having his morning coffee. He's just another guy, a guy like me.
Yeah.
And maybe he's a little better, and I don't know, but better musician, but just a guy. And it just sort of takes the magic out of it a little bit. And I kind of feel that the streaming thing is one more layer that's being stripped away
Sure.
of the magic of music and the artist and the performer.
Sure.
And
No, I hear you.
I'm an arrogant bastard, but
No, you're brutally honest, and I love getting this different perspective on it, and it all makes sense because you're right. There's a mystique, there's a mystery, there's a what's behind the curtain, Wizard of Oz type thing. That you're right that we know a bit too much now. Yeah. So okay, no, that's a great. I love it and I respect that, and I'm happy that you have your avenue because then we can enjoy your music, and when things are safe and semi-normal again, we can see you in 3 dimensions somewhere on stage. So that's awesome. But the music's going to keep happening, and folks, if you don't know this man's catalog, as you said, it's all there on Bandcamp, and that's one thing that's really great about the our web-driven kind of a life, that you can now support the artist directly, and so go to the Bandcamp, and there's not one yet for Lana, but stay tuned for that. But just go to her site and learn a little bit about her music, and be ready for this new collaborative effort between them, because they do separate records, so it's really special when they've got something that they do together, as they have a number of times. I want to close with just give me your thoughts on. We're around the same age. I'm a couple years older. I'm way grayer, but a couple years older. But give me your thoughts, because we've, when the Andromeda came out, for instance, as you said, you painted the picture that the people you spoke to were like, who wants an analog? Everyone's got computers now and software, and that was starting to happen. I would buy Future Music every month, an electronic musician in the 90s, and you got a disc so it was software. To your point, there was nothing out there. I think Dave Smith had those little poly things, and there was nothing. So give me your thoughts as we race ahead 20 to 25 years from that point. Dave Smith Sequential is putting out stuff. There's a new Oberheim. There's the Moog 1, and all the modulars are out. You've got IK Multimedia doing organic analog synthesis. You have this universe of Make Noise and Pittsburgh and Erica, all these incredible. I would be here for another hour and a half just listening, right? Korg with these incredible new analogs. So it's like, in a way, I consider you a pioneer, because you and your team, I love that you do always give credit to the whole team. Y'all really, through that, you proved that people are going to want to play a keyboard. And here we are. So give me your thoughts about how it feels now to have all of this amazing stuff coming out.
I've always thought that a synthesizer, I'm not even going to limit to analog, but a synthesizer is a musical instrument every bit as much as a Les Paul guitar or a Fender Stratocaster or a Stradivarius violin or a Fender P-Bass. And there are models that have appeared over the years that are special. Like what is, I'm not a guitar player, but you know, like is it a 57 Les Paul? There's a certain model of Les Paul that
Yeah.
you know, that's the one, man. If you get that, you know, who cares if they cost $600,000? That's the one that sounds amazing.
Right. 63 Strat or whatever. Yeah. 55 Telly. Right. You have a long list.
Yeah, and the same with amps. You know, Marshall Plexi from that. And synths are the same way. You know, the Vinny Appice Model D is the greatest synth of all time. It was just right. And it's not perfect. It's kind of odd, in fact. And, you know, Bob Moog did, you know, unconventional things, but, you know, he wanted to sound a certain way. And, you know, he wanted the envelopes a certain way. And he wanted it, you know, the mixer to overdrive in a certain way. And it's a beautiful, classic instrument right up there with those guitars and all that. And I feel, you know, the Andromeda is in that league, one of those classics. I'm not going to say it's as classic as the Mini Moog, it's not. But it is one of those special instruments, you know, the Oberheim OBX, the EMS VCS3. These are all, you know, special, iconic instruments.
Yeah.
And I use them, and I say this all the time. I use them not because they're vintage. I don't have like this fetish thing where, oh man, I can only play a 1972 Rhodes Mark I. I have a 1972 Rhodes Mark I, by the way. It sounds great. But I just use whatever sounds good, and those things sound good, you know. It's like Vinny Appice Model D, man. You can get one of those, do it. That sounds amazing. An Alesis Andromeda, amazing synth. People that designed it and executed it. There's a lot of love in that.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of like passion. And, you know, I remember arguing about, you know, certain like modulation routings that we were going to put in. Like, really, you really need that? And then, you know, Keith Barr, the chip designer and the owner of Alesis, he would constantly challenge, like, you know, what is this? Why do you need this, you know, triple rectifier thing? You're gonna rectify a sound, and then you're gonna rectify it again, and you're gonna rectify it a third time. And then, you know, you have guys on the team like, no, it's because this, you do this.
Right.
You need to do it again here because then it gets rounded off a little bit. You're like, well, okay. So there's a lot of that, a lot of spirit in that. And then, you know, in many ways it's over designed. And unfortunately, in some other ways, it's under designed, like because it was made by this company that gave lower cost. They really wanted to keep costs down, so they put plastic on it. And plastic means not as robust as, you know, a lot of like Moog synths, for example. You know, a Vinny Moog Model D, you could pick that up and use that to like hammer in nails, and then take it to your play, and it would work fine. You know, if you did that with an Andromeda, the nail would probably win. So, got to be careful with those. So when you buy one, when you go to find a used one, make sure that everything works, and that especially that it looks clean. It looks clean on the outside. It probably hasn't been, you know, dragged all around the world like over there. I have two other ones. One that doesn't work that I need to get working, and then another one that's like the Nigel Tufnell, don't even look at it. It's just so mint and perfect, like it can never be played.
Right.
So, what are we talking about?
Well, you know, I think it's such an important synth because it really, I think, showed everyone, hey, you know what? People do want something with keys, something with knobs and sliders and switches. They're done with the menus, and they don't. Computers were really cool by then, but people. So I applaud you for being part of the team that broke through the ice on that. I was saying, just give us a thought or two on almost, I think, maybe like a proud parent, but here we are, and the landscape is filled with all these companies doing really great synths and a lot of music, a lot of young people now. There's so many people in their 20s now who you see these bands, and they have really cool. So I was just asking you to comment on what it feels like in 2021 that all of this great synthesis is out there, hardware and software.
It's amazing, and it's a great time to make music. There are a lot of tools out there that make someone with very little skill and or talent sound like they have. But again, as an everyday SOB, I will say, if you do have a little bit of skill and talent, those tools are amazing. Yeah. Because we can do things now that even in the 90s, when we had ADATs and things like that we couldn't. And so to take advantage of the whirlwind of innovation that's going on right now, instruments, synthesizers, and even specifically with analog synthesizers and the Eurorack work, it's a great time to be music. Obviously, I would campaign to not be lazy and don't let the gear make the music for you.
Great.
Use it. Make your own music. Learn how to play your damn guitar, man. Learn those scales on the keyboard. And when you do, what you can do is amazing. And without going down a rabbit hole, I would also say you don't need to have 100 different synthesizers to make a great record. In fact, when I'm making a record, a lot of times I'll limit the number of instruments I use just so I can stay focused.
Right.
In fact, like the Duke of the Orient, the Freak Show album, that's mostly memory. I just thought, okay, I came up with this kind of, sweeping pad sound, and thought, okay, well, if I double track this, that's the sound of it. And so I really ended up using that. Okay, I've got 15 other great sounding polysynths I could use, but I ended up using that one. And if I had nothing but this Yamaha XF8, if I only had that, nothing else, I could make a great record.
Right.
No problem. That one keyboard alone, and I just picked it randomly. I mean, anything in the room here. You could do so much with that just by getting inside and learning what it does.
Sure.
All the capabilities of it. So don't necessarily need to have 6 different versions of the mid mode and EMSV trees and all that.
That's a great answer, and a couple of really just kernels of wisdom packed into that. Learn your instrument, folks. Study music. Study, get better, and maybe you're right, that push button thing of where you can just pick chords from a table and just kind of, you're right. There is a thing there, and some people want that, but playing the instrument, learning it, and the other thing you said that I love is focus. If you have 10 instruments, do a record with one, or kind of, make it about the music is what I'm hearing. So that's awesome. Well, this is great. We're out of time here, and I'm just going to see if anyone has maybe a question as we close. Again, folks, you got the websites up there, easy to remember. Please follow up on this, and a bunch of new music coming down the pike. And hopefully we can be in 3D playing some shows soon. That'd be great. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Rhythm Farmer. I don't know who that is by that name, but Brian.
That's Greg Ellis. It's Greg Ellis.
Oh, awesome. Hey, Greg Ellis. Brian Schiller is here. Thank you for being here. He says, we're in an analog resurgence, and Erik had a part in sparking it. Yes, we were just saying that. Now we've got amazing new synths coming, like the Arturia Polybrute, MS-20, and other classics. Thank you, Erik. I second that. And here's Greg. Greg, who was on Lana's record. Yes, Mark McCreate is here, too. So this is great. A lot of cool people here. Thanks for stopping by, folks. Thanks for making this a fun hang. And my name's André Cholmondeley. We're here at Make Weird Music. Please subscribe. Please like. Tell people about it. Our mission here is to present artists like this and give them a chance to just kind of chill out and talk about some different stuff. We really enjoy you sharing that with us tonight. I'll be back. I've got another show called Confronting Creativity. We've got a lot of great shows coming up for the rest of the summer. I appreciate you being here. Thank you. Erik, stick around for a second. I'm just going to end the stream here and then see you, folks. And cool, we're off the air.